On a humid evening of October the 28th, 2006, in the small town of Port Richey, Florida, the air was thick with the impending sense of something amiss. Marisa Weber, a 37-year-old woman burdened by the confines of her existence within her parental home, crossed the threshold into the dimly lit, clutter-filled living room of her house, calling out to her mother in a routine greeting that went unanswered. The silence was not unusual, as the sound of dinner preparations emanated from the kitchen, a comforting sign of normalcy in an otherwise strained household atmosphere. Marisa's attempt to navigate through the cramped living room was abruptly interrupted by one of the family's many cats, which, in a frenzy, dashed past her, narrowly avoiding a collision. The cat's sudden halt and intense stare at the baseboard hinted an unseen presence, likely one of the rats that had recently taken up residence within the walls of the Weber home. This encounter, far from being a mere annoyance, stirred a deep-seated unease in Marisa, amplifying her existing anxieties and despair. The infestation of rats had become a palpable representation of her life's stagnation and decay, contributing significantly to her psychological distress. Compelled by a mixture of revulsion and resignation, Marisa momentarily fixated on the cat, understanding all too well the grim reality of their living conditions. Despite her inner turmoil, the presence of these rodents, scurrying unseen yet ever present, had pushed her to a breaking point, exacerbating her mental health struggles. The home, supposed to be a sanctuary, had become a prison of sorts, with Marisa feeling trapped not only by her circumstances, but also by her reliance on anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications, a testament to her desperate attempts to find some semblance of peace amidst the chaos. Turning away from the unsettling scene with the cat and the imagined rats behind the wall, Marisa proceeded to the kitchen, seeking the comfort of her family's presence. The brief exchange with her parents in the kitchen, a fleeting moment of normalcy, did little to ease her burdened mind. Declining the offer of food with a resigned acknowledgement of her own exhaustion, Marisa sought refuge in the only place she felt she could escape, however fleetingly, from her reality: her bedroom. The act of retiring early, a simple declaration of her intent to rest, marked a deeper, more profound exhaustion, a weariness of a life that felt increasingly devoid of hope or change. As Marisa ascended the stairs to her room, the weight of her despair was a silent companion. The closing of her bedroom door was not just a physical barrier, but a metaphorical one, separating her from the outside world, a world she felt increasingly disconnected from. The events of this ordinary evening, mundane on the surface, were in reality a prelude to a tragedy that would unfold in the shadows of the Weber household, hidden from view, yet devastatingly palpable in its aftermath. The morning after Marisa retreated to her solitary sanctuary upstairs, dawn broke with the usual routines of the Weber household springing to life. Unbeknownst to her parents, nestled in their expectations of a typical day, was the unsettling fact that Marisa would not be making her usual appearance. With breakfast preparations underway and the day's early chores being attended to, an eerie silence hung over the house, punctuated only by the absence of Marisa's presence. Assuming she had already left for her job at the waste disposal company, her parents dismissed the unusual quiet as just another day's beginning, overlooking the ominous undertones of her absence. Marisa's job a secretary position that provided her with a semblance of independence was her daily escape from the stifling environment of her home. However, her failure to descend the stairs that morning and engage in the familiar exchange of goodbyes went unnoticed, a detail lost in the mundane rush of a weekday morning. As evening approached and the household settled back into its routine, Marissa's absence extended into a second phase of silence. Her parents, accustomed to her independence and respecting her need for personal space, rationalized her absence as perhaps a deviation from her usual routine, a simple explanation for a complex situation they were yet to comprehend. The night wore on, and the void left by Marissa's silence grew heavier, a palpable tension that lingered in the air. Yet, the thought of foul play or misfortune had not yet crossed her parents' minds. They clung to the hope that the morning would bring her return, dismissing the gnawing concern that something was amiss. The next day, however, dawned with no sign of Marisa. The realization that she had neither returned home nor contacted them ignited a spark of panic, especially within her mother, whose fears swiftly escalated from worry to dread. Speculations of kidnapping or worse scenarios began to take root, fueled by Marissa's vulnerability due to her petite stature. The possibility that she could have been abducted while on her way to or from work was a terrifying thought that her mother just could not shake off. In desperation, she reached out to Gina, Marissa's sister, hoping for reassurance or a plan of action. Gina, brought into the fold of growing concern, attempted to instill a sense of calm, suggesting a systematic search of the house for any clue that might shed light on Marissa's whereabouts. The search, thorough and invasive, turned the house inside out, yet yielded nothing that could explain the sudden disappearance. The discovery of Marissa's purse, left untouched in her room, with her wallet still inside, was a chilling find. It signaled a break from rational explanations to something far more alarming. Marisa, it seemed, had vanished without the essentials one would naturally take when leaving home voluntarily. The stark reality of the situation set in, prompting the family to finally contact the authorities and report Marisa missing. Despite the involvement of law enforcement, the investigation seemed to hit a dead end, the days passing with no leads, no sightings, and no word from Marisa. The family's desperation grew as the calendar marked the 12th day since Marissa's last known presence among them. With the police at a loss and the family grasping at straws, Gina harbored a grim hypothesis. She couldn't help but consider the darkest possibilities, given Marissa's recent struggles with mental health and her vocal discontent with their living situation. The thought that Marisa might have chosen to flee her life, or worse, harm herself, was a possibility Gina felt compelled to confront. Driven by this haunting notion, she resolved to make one final, exhaustive search of the home they all shared, starting with the room Marisa had last claimed as her own. The decision to start with Marissa's bedroom was intuitive, a place that held the essence of her private world, cluttered with the evidence of a life paused mid-sentence. Gina steeled herself for what she might find, entering the room with a mix of dread and determination. The room, a chaotic collection of belongings, clothes and memories, seemed to echo Marissa's internal turmoil, each corner a testament to her complicated existence. As Gina sifted through the belongings, Her eyes were drawn to the bookshelf, an innocuous piece of furniture that seemed out of place in the otherwise disorderly room. It was here, amidst the clutter and shadows, that Gina's flashlight beam revealed a shocking discovery that would unravel the mystery of Marissa's disappearance, casting a new, harrowing light on the events of October the 28th. As the investigation into Marisa Weber's disappearance stagnated with neither leads nor clues to her whereabouts, the Weber household sank deeper into a state of despair. Unbeknownst to them, the solution to the haunting mystery lay hidden within the very walls of Marissa's cluttered bedroom. It was a space that, over the days following her disappearance, began to emit a subtle, unsettling odor, a faint but growing reminder that something was amiss. The change went largely unnoticed or was dismissed by the family, attributed to the general disarray of Marissa's room or the presence of rodents that had plagued their home. The true source of the smell, however, was far more macabre than they could have ever imagined. On November the 9th, 12 agonizing days since Marisa was last seen, as Gina realized what exactly her flashlight had revealed, she was immediately filled with shock and pure horror. Tucked away behind the bookshelf, in a gap just wide enough for a person to fall into but not escape, was Marisa. In her quest for a moment of solace, Marisa had accidentally trapped herself in a position that would become her tomb. The space was so confined and Marisa so tightly wedged that even as her family searched the room in those initial days, calling her name, she was unable to respond. On that fateful night, Marisa had taken 2 strong painkillers, morphine and codeine, and smoked marijuana. In her intoxicated state, affected deeply by the drugs, she tried to fix a simple problem. The TV had become unplugged. This task led her to climb on top of the bureau to reach the power outlet behind the bookshelf. With her judgment severely impaired by the drugs, she underestimated the danger of her actions. As she reached for the plug, she lost her balance and fell into the narrow space between the bookshelf and the wall, becoming trapped in a position that left her hanging upside down. The effects of the opiates and marijuana numbed her senses, complicating her already dire situation. Unable to free herself or effectively call for help, Marisa was left in a vulnerable state, unable to escape her unintended confinement. The realization that Marisa had been alive, trapped, and silently suffering just feet away from her searching family is a chilling testament to the torment she endured. The gravity of her predicament, a struggle not just against physical confines, but also the metaphorical walls that had boxed her into a corner of despair, becomes starkly evident. The initial silence of her entrapment eventually gave way to the irreversible silence of death, her body beginning to decompose in the hidden crevice behind the bookshelf. The faint, unidentifiable smell that had begun to permeate her room was, in fact, Marissa's body, slowly decomposing out of sight as her family desperately searched for her. Gina's discovery was of Marissa's foot, visible in the beam of her flashlight, and marked the harrowing end to the search for Marisa, revealing a truth too gruesome for the family to have ever imagined. Marissa's fate, a grim reminder of the fragility of life and the depths of despair one can encounter, left her family grappling with a multitude of emotions, grief, guilt, and the haunting, permanent question of what if? had they discovered her sooner. So that's it for today's bizarre story. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more unsettling content. Thanks for watching and goodbye.